Well, hey, you, and welcome back to another episode of the Miss Michaela Mae Show. I'm your host, Miss Michaela Mae, and as always, I'm here with my corgis, Tank and Willie. You can't see them if you're on the video, but they are here in the background with me. And today is a little different. If you've clicked on this episode, you know the title of the episode is Star Wars Has a Prequel, and so do I. And I forgot that about 2 weeks ago, I was debating on this podcast and going back and forth. And I said, you know what, Michaela, just sit down in the chair, press record, and see what comes out. And if you publish these episodes, whatever, if you wait, did I say that right? If you publish these episodes, whatever, if you don't publish them, whatever, just the most important thing is you get your butt in the chair and you start recording. And then, as you know, today, this is a continuation of today. I wanted to see if I could start, record, and launch a podcast in one day or less. For the initial first 5 episodes, we actually did it in under 5 hours, which is pretty exciting. And as I was going through and editing them, I found these episodes. And when I found them, I was listening back to them and I said, you know what? I said some things in here that is really important to me. And as I said in the introductory episode, that is one of my main intentions with this podcast is to say and speak on the things that are really important to me. So even though I repeat a couple of things, I do say some different things that are really important for me to just put out into the world. And so I decided to just add a different introduction. And then also it's kind of cool for you to see and get a peek behind the curtain of when I was very much still up in the clouds, not knowing where this was going to go, what was going to happen, and that I just sat down and recorded. So because of all of those reasons, I've decided to make it episode 6 on the Miss Michaela Mae Show. So without further ado, let's get into episode 6, the prequel of the Miss Michaela Mae Show, if you will. Thank you. And here we go. Well, if you're here, you are with me on the start of a very new journey. So new that this podcast actually does not have a name yet. And the reason it does not have a name yet is because I don't know what the name is, obviously. But I have this pattern of wanting to get everything so perfect and so just down and wanting something to look like it's at a step 10 when it's really at a step 1. And I heard some advice a couple weeks ago that if you don't have clarity, just start and the clarity will come. Meaning, I may not have clarity for the podcast name and all the other details, but I do know what I want to talk about, meaning I can start recording. I can get going and let the clarity come. I can get recording. I can just get rolling and allowing this to be at a step 1, which is where we're at. It's a little different than most step 1s because this will now be my 3rd podcast that I've started. The first one was called Live Aligned Radio, and I retired it because that was at a time where I wanted to be a life coach. I do work with people one-on-one, but it's not as a coach per se. It's more of a trauma guide and an intuitive. And my other podcast, which is actually still going to continue going, is called The Western Hippie. And The Western Hippie, I was trying to make it what this podcast is going to be while doing this other thing, trying to put a square peg in a round hole, as cliche as that is. I really just want the Western Hippie to be about holistic healing for dogs and horses, where I want this podcast to be more about healing for humans, but also going into cultural stuff that I'm so passionate about. I don't know if I'm going to talk politics yet. It could be a potential. And then more, how do we not only heal ourselves, but heal the culture that we are in? My sister and I were talking a couple weeks ago around Charlie Kirk's death about the culture being sick. And you know, when someone says something and you've always taken it to mean one thing, and then all of a sudden you hear it and see it differently. And I was actually comparing it to The Lion King. In The Lion King, where Simba's perception is the day Mufasa gets offed by Scar, he can only see Mufasa falling. He cannot see that Scar is the one that put his claws into Mufasa and essentially pushed him off the cliff. And then at the end, when Simba and Scar are in their battle, and Scar has his paws like around Simba's neck, and he says, "Here is my little secret. I killed Mufasa." And Simba gets this flash of what really happened. The situation didn't actually change. The way Simba saw it changed. And that was how I felt when my sister texted me, like, people are sick. I always looked at it as sick, as in mess up, as in disturbed. There's something wrong with them. And then but the way she said it that day, and maybe it was because emotions were high, because our culture has gotten to a point where we're assassinating a man in cold blood for talking, that could be just the combination of things. But I took it very literally, as in, we are sick. Our culture is sick. Our culture is unwell. And especially looking at it from the lens of holistic healing, which I have been so passionate about for the last, well, I just turned 30 and I've started studying this when I was 18. So I'll let you do the math. That's 12 years ago. Oh boy. Um, oh boy. Yeah. Time flies. I tell you, when I was younger, my dad used to tell me these stories about how it goes a lot faster than you think. And you're just like, yeah, whatever, Dad. Like, my dad's a boomer, so totally have the attitude of, okay, boomer. And then you get here and you realize it actually does go a lot faster than we wanted to admit. Our parents being correct. But anyway, that aside, studying this holistic healing for the last 12 years, I thought about it, someone who does that is unwell. They're not just disturbed, like, they are unwell. And especially, this is something that's not talked about, but how so many of shooters that we have are on medications. And so I really want this podcast to be not just about, like, healing, like, have the Western hippie be about healing our animals, but then have this show not only be healing ourselves, but how do we heal this culture too? Because when I was in, I think it was in 2020, I had this moment of, and it's funny because I hadn't heard of, like, Jordan Peterson yet, but one of the things that I had kind of come up with without even hearing Jordan Peterson talk about was, trying to heal the world with a broken heart only creates this more broken world. And it is essentially the same idea as Jordan Peterson's concept of, you got to make your bed first before you go out and try to make the world's bed, because so many of us are trying to heal this world with a broken heart. And the thing about having a broken heart is it distorts our perception. We can't see things clearly. For example, some of the things that I've been working on the last year or so is self-image. Like, how do we see ourselves more clearly? Because if we're looking at ourselves with that broken heart through the lens of trauma, it's like looking at looking through at something with broken lenses and wondering why, things looked cracked. And so we have to get new lenses, we have to get clear lenses, and then look at the situation, and not continually looking at situations through this kaleidoscope looking lens. And so that's really what has inspired this show and inspired this podcast and inspired this new pivot, if you will, is making, I've really wanted to take my brand, The Western Hippie. I got more clear on the long-term vision for the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I want to do horse supplements and dog supplements, and probably create, like, a little therapy room at some point. And so it became really clear, like, this needs to niche down and just be about the animals, where all this other passion project stuff I have needs to be under a personal brand of some kind. So that's why we're here. That's what we're doing. So this is just my first welcome introductory episode. I guess I should introduce myself. I haven't done an introductory episode in so long, it didn't really occur to me. But my name is Michaela, and I am from the Pacific Northwest. Like I said, started studying holistic healing therapies when I was 18, oddly enough, because of Shailene Woodley. I fell in love with the Divergent movie, and when I fall in love with something, I want to know everything about not just the thing, but about everything around the thing. And specifically, when I fell in love with the Divergent movie, I fell in love with Tris, who's the main character, who is played by Shailene Woodley. And I would just go, I don't know if I just wasn't, because this would have been around like 2000. I graduated in 14, so this was probably around 2013, 2014. And at this point, I wasn't really an internet person. Like, I had social media, but I wouldn't say I would go to the internet to look at things. Like, I would still go to the stores and get magazines to, like, read through things. And I remember reading this article in a magazine. It was an interview with Shailene Woodley, and she started talking about how much trust she had in her body, and she only ate something if it felt good in her body. And I just thought that was so interesting because at that point I had been on a weight loss journey and I just thought my body hated me. Like I thought my body wanted me to be overweight. I thought my body forced me to crave all of these things. It didn't dawn on me that there might have been some imbalance that was creating these things and it wasn't actually my body out to get me. And it put me on a whole journey of like, I just like started eating up the information. So Shailene would talk about having these, I think it was documentaries. And so then I watched the documentaries, like one thing led to another. And I just developed this like faith and trust in healing things. And then that led me to starting to treat animals holistically. Yeah. And I'm the town hippie. So that was really what inspired the Western hippie. But then 2020 came around and I call 2020 the year my brain broke. But if I was getting really specific and really accurate, 2020 was the year that I acknowledged that my brain was broken. I would say, unfortunately or fortunately, I have been, and I'm working on not being this person anymore. But in the past, I have been a person that things have to get to a level 10 before I'll pay attention. Like when something's at a level 2, I'm like, it's fine. But then when it gets to a level 10, I'll finally do something about it. Again, I'm trying to change that pattern within my life. I am changing that pattern within my life. I actually have gotten a lot better about that. But so I think my brain was cracked and then 2020 made it completely break. So I had to acknowledge that there was something not right with my brain and that the trauma that I said I was okay with, I was actually not okay with, which I knew, but I wasn't admitting. And there is a difference between knowing something and actually admitting it. And so that put me on a journey of I'm actually going to cross post these episodes here. I might actually delete them from the Western Hippie itself and just upload them to this podcast. But I went and did 2 rounds of MDMA therapy. I've sat with mushrooms a couple of times. I've actually moved away from doing psychedelics, which I will explain as we go on this podcast why. Moved into more doing emotional healing type therapy, whether that be emotion code. I'm trained in a couple other modalities and really started exploring my own psyche and my own imbalances within myself. And from learning about that, and then also within 2020, learning more about culture and politics, it's really just shifted some passions that I never thought I would have, and realizing like how these imbalances within ourselves are really creating the imbalances within the culture. And then honestly, after Charlie Kirk died, like I knew I needed to do something else. I, whether agree or disagree with certain people, I just don't, I'm actually kind of mad at myself for just saying that because one of the reasons I was getting ticked off at people because I felt like they were being cowards, to be honest with you, about like, I didn't agree with what he said, but a man shouldn't get shot down in cold blood. I did agree with most of what Charlie said, religion wise. That was where I have a different spiritual perspective than Charlie. But other than that, I agreed with him on most things. And so I'm not even I wanted to correct myself because I don't even want to sit here and say like I didn't agree with him, but I don't agree. I did agree with him, and I not only did I agree with him on a lot of things, I think he was a genuinely good person. Like even the day after he passed, I caught myself saying like not Charlie, because there was just a purity to Charlie that so many people miss because we hear somebody's words, but we miss their heart. And as someone who I feel like I've experienced that a lot in my life of people hear my words, but they miss my heart because we've come to a place in our culture where there's really 2 things. We prefer honest assholes over kind liars. And we prefer to be building off of that statement. We prefer to be lied to kindly than told the truth bluntly. And so we have someone like Charlie going out there and talking to the people that he quote unquote disagreed with, but genuinely wanted their well-being and the goodness of their heart. We have him getting shot down in cold blood. And I'm sitting there like, we have to pick up the torch and we have to carry this. And so I'm recording this on September 25th. And really, so it's been 15 days since Charlie was shot. And in those 15 days, really just sitting with what is my part in this? And again, I said, I don't have the same spiritual beliefs as Charlie. I don't identify as a Christian, which I will get into, but I do believe in God and I do believe in a higher power and I do believe in prayer. So I've been praying and meditating on, okay, God, what is my part in this? What do I need to do? And it really seemed like, okay, that's another reason is we don't need to bring culture and politics into this healing, animal healing that I do, that can be completely separate. But as far as this and sharing my voice and my perspective from doing this healing work on myself, it is a necessity. And I do need to pick up the baton that I feel like a lot of us have a duty to pick up the baton where Charlie left it. And the other thing that I wanted to get really clear on is I don't want one thing that it's really interesting, and I'll go deeper on this in a different episode, but one thing that's really interesting is when you've been emotionally numb for a long time, which is where I was at, which was what led me to my 2020 and 2021 situation. When you've been emotionally numb for a long time and then your emotions come back on, it's actually a good thing. But I actually didn't have emotional tools to not get controlled by my emotions because I was just numb to them. And so what I really wanted to get clear on was, with this, I didn't want to be driven purely by emotion. I wanted to be driven by mission with this podcast. And again, picking up the baton where Charlie left off, I didn't want to do, like, I don't know how to say this. I tell my friends sometimes, like, we're just going to word vomit and see where we pick up. But I didn't want to be emotionally driven just by the fact that he died. And I thought, but like, because that part of the mission that he was working on, it's also my mission, and I have a duty to do this. And so that's the other reason as to why we're here. So again, I'm not fully sure where this is going. Don't have all the fancy stuff as far as like, this is the what blah, blah, blah podcast. I do know I'm your host, Michaela. I don't have like a sign off yet. But I'm really thankful you're here, and I'm excited to see where this journey takes us and the people I will meet along the way. So if you made it to this first episode, thank you for being here. And I will talk to you in the second episode when I have a bit more clarity.